It's 9:54 on the 8th of June 2023, and it is yet again another day in Tralee of individuals, professionals, practitioners that are still awaited to do what they're supposed to do. It's very difficult for some people to fulfill their obligations, and they lower the tone and they lower the standard and they lower the levels in society, and they bring all the legislation that has come into being from me into awful disrepute and damage it indiscriminately. The dodging and ducking and diving of individuals that are living off legislation from my academic research and my professional portfolio and my humanitarian cause. Those that are living off legislation from me are at risk in society, offending the law and offending the Constitution. I'm aware of politicians that are confused about what's right and what's wrong. I'm aware that there are politicians that are arduously endeavouring to cause damages, disrespect and defamation where they will be damaging themselves. There are politicians that are showing me that they aren't competent, that they have not got the backbone to do what's right, and they have affiliated themselves with the right wing of politics, and they have not behaved in accordance with right wing, and they have acted in bad faith against my spiritual royal purpose that they are not going to be rewarded for offending. So the legislation that has come from my purpose is being damaged by incompetent politicians, 2 or 3 to name a few or to list a few. They have damaged the Constitution, they've damaged Irish society, and I don't have any respect for any of those that have damaged the education departments that I have served, or the agriculture department that I have served, or that the family protection department that I have served. I have worked for the state. I have provided contributions in the form of legislation to the state that are subject to fraud, and that's all very dangerous due to an irresponsible representative up in Dublin that is unable to be of calibre or quality. There are people mentally disturbed in this situation that are confusing themselves with, or they're compromising themselves with young women's positions. It's a very dirty situation, women's bodies being used in business or bartering or bargaining. Young women's bodies have been used as a commodity, and that's not safe for little girls' futures, especially when it's offending a women and children's rights advocate, and especially when my son is illegally from my care. So if my child isn't located, and if there are girls, women, going to be using their assets that their parents gave birth to, if they're going to be using those assets, it's quite disgusting. It's disgusting to women and our role in society. And those politicians that are working with those kind of commodities are cheapening the standard, and are definitely not of the calibre that is expected of any right, upwardly upright standards. So those that are living off legislation from me that are disrespecting fellowship, there are people that are jumping onto a bandwagon that they haven't been a part of at all. For nearly 20 years I've been of fellowship practices that are sanity and sobriety. So sanity and sobriety is the basis of the legislation that has come about as a consequence of me in 2019. And the people that are working off legislation fraudulently, that doesn't actually have a proper accreditation, and that is being subject to fraud and academic fraudulence, it's quite dangerous a situation. The basis of the legislation is from my sanity and sobriety purpose as a recovery advocate with narcotics recovery addicts and advocates, and that's with the past 20 years. So just in case anyone's getting confused, all of that is at high risk due to people that are not respecting my property, my patronage, the protocol, or my royal positions. So the issues that I'm tolerating are quite unsafe for any politicians up in Dublin that think it's safe to offend worldwide legislation. I'm going to have to remind them of their mental illness. There are people in my proximity that are not safe in society, disrespecting the principles of sanity and sobriety that I represent. And those people that have used the Kerry University Hospital representatives to cause unlawful detainment. As I'm a married mother and I live on my own, and as I have to document my whereabouts every 20 minutes, it's really not safe for anyone to think that unlawful detainments or violations of freedom or threats to life or anything like that is safe for their futures. The authorities have been requested since 2017 to locate my child. He's still a missing person, and as long as he's not in my care where he's legally meant to be, then there's going to be a problem in people's families that are owing anything to my name, especially with regard to the recovery that has come about in the past. There's been a huge recovery since 2019. It's come in many shapes and forms and sizes, and it's saved people's futures. So that recovery has many aspects and facets to it. So those people that are fonging, badgering and bargaining about money and dirty debts being evaded, it's really disgusting what their children have to carry. It's really unsafe for the children of the future and the doctors that haven't done what they're supposed to do. So people that are dodging and ducking and diving and that are bringing the field of psychiatry into disrepute, those that are suffering from mental illness, you really need to get a grasp of reality, I suppose, in these circumstances where people get ahead of themselves and don't respect what has come about and what is yet to transpire. So anyone up in Dublin that considers themselves a representative of the country, you might look at my records of my royals, and you might acquaint yourself with a few little facts about what your obligations are to this person. Anyone up in Dublin that's not fulfilling obligations, you're committing crimes against the church and the constitution and against children's innocent lives. So if anyone up in Dublin that's taking a salary while holding a seat and not fulfilling what they're meant to be fulfilling, and if they're working with social influencers or debt evaders that have been already caught for fraud and that have been upsetting my little boy, the politicians might think properly about this, because the worldwide legislation and the recovery from me is quite huge. The people's lives, the impact it has had. So I'm not going to be shy about it, because there's a lot of defamation with regard to my character and my characteristics. I have been slandered, and that's because of mental health practitioners. That's due to mental health practitioners that have been foul-mouthed, slandering on behalf of a clique in County Kerry that have been a bad PR. So I unashamedly have to put my case forward, or my stance, my purpose with regard to worldwide legislation to the fore, due to people that have been resorting to cheap talk. So anyone that has been of crimes on behalf of debt evaders or farm trespass or unlawful care orders of my child, any of those crimes are unfortunately putting all that legislation recovery at risk. So the sooner that people are able to step up to the mark, and once people are able to respect the role of the female, the feminine, the womanhood of what we provide to society, being a mother, being a provider, being a caregiver, being a teacher, being all that we are, people that disrespect females in society, or women, young girls that put themselves at risk, are not really, helping themselves or their futures. I've been 25 years a qualified professional, and it's a little bit cheeky for young ones that are using their bodies, putting other young people at risk to step up to a plate that they shouldn't be taking from. So there have been people taking from a table where they're not welcome at my table, and they're not welcome to be taking credit, creative, intellectual, academic credit. It's quite dangerous to be, playing with. So the young girls really need to be careful disrespecting women and children's advocates that are of worldwide legislation and narcotics recovery advocacy. As a royal humanitarian, I have worked with all facets of society, and as I've mentioned, my qualifications, my credentials are quite high on the framework. So I would hope that people would be able to respect education and recovery and humanitarian values, and people pandering and bargaining and bartering their bodies or their brains to do business that isn't of ethics, morals, or good values or beliefs need to be really careful about putting themselves at risk, because we've already seen casualties with these people that are offending my royal ancestry. So my final point, up in Dublin, if you could ever just do what you're supposed to be doing, that you're taking a salary for, I would appreciate you not putting yourselves at risk offending me. We've already seen casualties with the crimes I've been tolerating and the crimes that my child has been tolerating. Any threats to my child and I, and there is no success from any legislation that has come from me. I can say that with full confidence. So I hope everyone's making smart decisions, and I hope there aren't people discussing matters that aren't actually within their qualifications. There are people discussing matters that they have no authority to be discussing without my consent. There are people, after taking upon themselves a whole load of academia from my repertoire and my portfolio, that I haven't condoned people to be taking credit for. So the sooner that people are able to do what they're supposed to do, it'll help people's futures. Those that are being cheap, disrespecting women, or disrespecting business, or disrespecting politics, any cheap talk is unhelpful to people's future success. We've already seen the quality and caliber drop to a real low level. So the sooner that people are able to be of good, upstanding values, and when they're able to demonstrate those values, then we'll see success. But we haven't seen success in County Kerry, unfortunately, simply due to people that have been stealing from me since 2006, and that's not safe for the teachers. That's not safe for the teachers in the classroom offending education. So I suppose that's as much as I have to say this morning. I hope everyone knows where they are on the football pitch. I hope they know about the foul cards and that there's no shifting the goalposts. Those that have been wearing the wrong jersey on the wrong side of the street or on the wrong side of the team or whatever, I hope you're aware of the own goals and the failed attempts of treason, which are actually crimes against the state. So this is for Europe and the European Union and the parliamentarians in Europe. This country has consciously decided to disrespect the church, the children and the constitution, and I cannot support that, as it is contradictory to my values and the legislation that came from my recovery advocacy. So I'd appreciate Europe contacting me at the details I've provided. There are people in Dublin claiming to be representatives receiving salaries that they're not doing a job for. So it's a very sad sign at the times.